Part 3, Chapter 1. Lizzie broke off from her story and turned to look at us. I'm so cross with myself. I meant to bring my photograph album with me, she said, but I left it at home in my little apartment when they brought me here. I miss it so much. I used to look at it almost every day, you know, the things I could have shown you. There is a photo of all of us down on the farm when I was a small girl and Carly was even smaller, just a baby in Poppy's arms in happier times. I love that photo. We are all outside the same hay barn, and I am sitting up on Tommy with Muddy holding him. And I have long plaits and big gappy smile. My 2 front teeth are missing. Uncle Manfred must have taken the picture because he is not in it, and Aunt Lottie is looking very serious as usual. When I look at this photo, I can see it all so clearly. I can almost breathe in the air of the countryside. And I have a photo also of Marlene, only one, but mostly it is of her trunk because she was trying to eat the camera. It is enough, though. Sometimes I worry that everything that happened might be some kind of dream, or that maybe I have made the whole thing up. But I only have to look at those photographs to know that I did not, that it did really happen. I wish I had brought them with me. I wish I could show you. We could always go and fetch them if you like, I said. If you trust us with your key, that is. Of course I do, dear, she replied. After all, I am trusting you with my story, aren't I? I have never told anyone else, you know. That would be kind, very kind. I have the key to my apartment here in my drawer, Carly. You might have to wiggle the key in the lock a bit, but you will manage. You can find it easily enough, just around the corner from Main Street on George Avenue, the first house. You go up the steps, number 2. She was reaching towards her bedside cupboard as she spoke, but hadn't the strength to pull open the drawer. So Carl did it for her, searching around till he found them. There was an elephant on the keychain. To remind me, she said, smiling. Then she noticed something else in her drawer, and her eyes brightened suddenly. Now this I never leave behind, Carly. I never go anywhere without it. Can you pass it to me? This is what I wanted to show you. I had no notion at first as to what it might be, and from the look of puzzlement on his face as he handed it over to her, neither did Carl. It was a small, round object made of metal, black in color. It's very heavy and cold, too, said Carl. What is it? By now I was beginning to think I recognized it for what it was. A compass, I said? Is that what it is? Lizzie was cradling it lovely in her cupped hands, and for several moments seemed too overcome to speak. You are quite right, dear, she replied at last. This is a compass to help you find your way. But this is not just any old compass. It is the best compass in the whole wide world, I promise you, because it has shown me the way all through life. She opened the lid and touched the face of it with her fingertips. I first saw this compass on that day, she went on, the day we found him lying there in the barn. I think sometimes that perhaps I had 2 beginnings in my life. The moment of my birth, of course, and the moment I set eyes on this man, this airman who I knew had bombed my city, a bomber, a killer, who had caused so much suffering to so many. As Muddy had said, here was the enemy, close to, in the flesh. He was not the first I had ever seen. Several times I had watched columns of prisoners of war being marched along the streets in Dresden. To be honest, I had never taken that much notice. They looked much like our soldiers, only dirtier, sadder. Some people would scream obscenities at them and spit at them and throw things, so I would look away. It made me feel ashamed. I never thought people could be that angry, that vindictive. I could not imagine what would make them do such things. But for just a moment, looking down at him lying there in the hay in Uncle Manfred's barn that morning, I understood it completely, and I hated him, and I hoped he was dead. Then he opened his eyes and looked at me, and I knew right away that he was more of a killer than Poppy was. I often wondered afterwards what it must have been like to wake up and see the 4 of us staring down at him, Muddy with the pitchfork pointing at his chest, and Marlene towering over us, her trunk reaching down towards him. His eyes were wide with alarm as he sat up in the hay and raised his hands in the air. English? Muddy said. Her voice was shaking from anger, I thought more than fear. No, Neen, he replied. Canadian, Canada. Bomber? Muddy was holding the pitchfork at his throat now. RAF? The man nodded. England, America, Canada. It does not matter where you come from. Do you know what you have done? Have you any idea? Muddy was shouting at him now and crying too in her fury. Did you see the fire you made? Are you proud of that? Do you know how many you killed? Do you care? Do you have any idea how beautiful a city Dresden was before you came? Do you? I should kill you right now." Muddy raised the pitchfork. I really thought she was going to do it. I grabbed her arm and held it fast. "You cannot do it, Muddy," I cried. "You must not. How often have I heard you say it? To Poppy, to me, to Uncle Manfred and Aunt Lottie. All killing is wrong, no matter what. It is what you have always told us. Remember?" It was many long moments before Muddy lowered the pitchfork. Then she stepped back and handed it to me. "Maybe I cannot do it," she said, "but I wanted to. That is what your bombs do. They make me hate. I think at this moment I hate you more than I have ever hated anyone in my whole life." "I do not blame you." To our astonishment, the airman was speaking to Muddy in almost perfect German. I saw the fire from the plane. I could not believe it. I did not expect it to be like that the whole city would burn like that. None of us did. "Oh, really?" said Muddy. "So tell me, what did you think it would be like then? Some kind of carnival? A fireworks displayed, perhaps?" "We thought it would be like the Blitz on London, I suppose, when the Luftwaffe came." The airman replied softly, not responding to all of Muddy's fury. "I was there, and that was terrible enough. But last night it looked like the fires of hell. That's what we're doing in all of this war. All of us, on your side, on our side. We are making a hell on earth, and we do not seem to be able to know how to stop. I am sorry. I know that is not enough, but it is all that I can say." No one spoke for some time until Carly piped up, breaking the silence between us. "Do you really fly a Spitfire?" he asked. "No, only a Lancaster, I'm afraid. And I didn't fly it anyway. I'm not a pilot. I'm a navigator." And when he smiled then, I remember thinking that he looked more like a boy than a man. "And you navigated your way to Dresden so you could drop your bombs on thousands of innocent people?" said Muddy. "Well, bravo you. How do people like you sleep at night? That is what I want to know." Muddy was looking about her, suddenly nervous. "And the others? Where are the others of your crew? Are you alone?" "All dead," the airman replied. "We were hit by a flak over the city. Everyone in the plane was killed except for Jimbo. He was the pilot, and me. Jimbo told me to get out right away, to jump. He said that he would hold the plane as steady as he could, and then follow me, but he never did. I saw the plane blow up as I was parachuting down. He saved my life. And that's funny, because Jimbo and me, we never got along. Not really. Bit of a joker, he was. Thought it was all just one big game, the war, I mean. Him and me, we'd have big arguments. He turned out to be pretty good buddy after all, didn't he? They were all good buddies, and now they're all gone." "Don't you dare expect me to feel sorry for them," Muddy said, not so threatening towards him as she had been, but still angry at him. "Not after what they did, what you did. And how come you speak German, anyway?" "I have a Swiss mother," the airman told her, "and a Canadian father, so I grew up speaking German and English." Carly was not concerned at all with any of this. He was full on his own questions. Muddy kept trying to stop him from speaking to the airman, but Carly ignored her. He wanted to know the man's name. "Peter," the airman said. "Peter Cam." Carly wanted to know how old he was. 21, came the reply. Then Carly took it upon himself to introduce everyone. "I am Carly, and I'm 9 years old. This elephant is named Marlene, and she is from the zoo in Dresden, and she is 4 years old, and I am the only one who is allowed to ride on her. And this is Elizabeth. She is 16 and is always telling me what to do. And Muddy is, well, she is Muddy. And I am hungry. Are you hungry, Peter?" Muddy took him by the arm and pulled him away then. But Carly could not stop looking at the young man, and the truth was, neither could I. I think I must have done nothing but stare at him the whole time. Now that he had a name, I found I was not looking so much at the uniform anymore. He was much taller than I expected when he got up to his feet. Pitchfork in hand, Muddy ushered him out through the barn door. We left Marlene shut in there, helping herself busily to the hay and rumbling with pleasure. It was not difficult to break a window and let ourselves into the farmhouse. Muddy said she felt bad about having to do it, but that needs must. We could hardly stand out in the snow and wait, could we? She would explain it all later to Uncle Manfred and Aunt Lottie when they came home, she said. They would understand. I was not so sure that they would. The stove was out, but it was still warm, so we thought they could not have been gone that long. Things were a mess, too, as if they had left the place in a hurry. The more we looked around, the more we were sure that, like so many others, they had left to join the great exodus westwards, taking with them what they could. Luckily for us, Uncle Manfred and Aunt Lottie must have left in too much of a rush to take all their food with them. There were some rounds of cheese, Uncle Manfred always made his own, and we found some fruit in jars and pickles too, and some honey. But best of all, down in the cellar, Muddy discovered a whole ham. I got the fire going in the stove. Carly fetched in the wood from the shed, and all the while the airman sat at the kitchen table, forbidden to move by Muddy, who kept a fearsome eye on him, and she took the pitchfork with her, I noticed, wherever she went around the house. When he offered to help me with the fire, she snapped at him and told him to sit where he was and be quiet. Carly and I were under strict instructions from her not to talk to him at all, even when we were sitting down with him to eat at the kitchen table, but that did not stop us from sneaking a look at him from time to time as he was eating. He was obviously as ravenous as we were. So we all ate in silence, not a word being spoken between us, until, that is, Muddy left the kitchen, telling us she was going to check on Marlene out in the barn. Before she went out, she handed me the pitchfork and told me to use it if I had to. I hate silences between people. I think I always have. I was longing to say something to Peter while Muddy was out of the room, but I was too shy, and anyway, I could not think of anything to say. Carly was never shy, though, never backward in coming forward. Before I knew it, he had gotten down from the table and was juggling with 2 large pine cones he'd found on the windowsill. "Can you do this?" he cried. "My little brother likes to do tricks," I explained to Peter. "He likes to play the fool. He is a bit of an actor, I suppose." "I can see that," Peter said. "He reminds me of me when I was little. It is what I used to do back home in Canada. Acting, I mean. It was all I ever wanted to do, go on stage like my mother before me and my father. I had just gotten started in Toronto, and then all of this happened. Anyway, it will be over soon enough now, and when it is, I'm going right back there. I can't wait." I liked to listen to him talk. He was so full of spirit, so determined. The truth was that I was enjoying his company, even though, of course, I knew that I should not be. The thing was, you see, I could tell that he liked being with me, talking to me, looking at me. I think maybe this is why I felt at once so much at ease with him. When you are young and you find for the first time that someone likes you like this, it is powerful, very powerful. But Carly soon had Peter's attention again, with his wretched juggling. 4 pine cones now. He was getting ambitious. A few minutes later, when Muddy came back in again, she found Peter and Carly sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of the stove, deep in conversation. Peter had something in his hand and was showing it to Carly, who was fascinated by it. I couldn't quite make out what they were saying or what it was, but I was busy at the sink by now and not paying much attention. Muddy shouted at Carly to get up and come to her at once. "Look, Muddy," he said, ignoring her completely. "Peter has a compass. He says it is like magic. He's been telling me all about it. Do you know he's only got to point it in one direction and it will take him all the way home?" "He's not going home, Carly," Muddy said, taking Carly by the arm and pulling him to his feet. "And I told you not to talk to him, didn't I?" "It was my fault," the airman said, holding up his hands. "Look, I am sorry." "You are always sorry," Muddy went on bitterly. "You are very good at being sorry. Well, you can be sorry in prison camp. As soon as I can, I shall return you over to the Albert, the police. They are bound to be out searching for you. They must have seen a parachute come down. Sooner or later, they will come looking, and I shall turn you in. Meanwhile, you will not integrate yourself with my children. You will not speak to them, and they will not speak to you. Do you hear me? And if you try to run away, you will either freeze to death out there, or the Albert will come and catch you. Either way, you are not going home." She held out her hand for the compass. "And I will have the compass, please. Without it, you are not going home. You are not going anywhere." Peter took some time getting to his feet. He did not say a word. Towering over Muddy, he looked down at her, closed the compass, and handed it to her.